individuals. The Lowell Inn, serving the small meeting needs of local companies in history-filled Stillwater. The law firm of Gray, Plant, Moody, and Bennett, a professional association where results are a tradition. And by Waldorf Corporation, producers of quality recycled paperboard and packaging for nearly a century.
Send lawyers, guns, and money. Almanac's next.
I almost called you so many times.
They both loved him, but his loss was something they didn't know how to share.
I always had it in the back of my mind that one day we would be friends.
You took my son from me.
And now he's gone from both of us.
American Playhouse presents Andre's Mother with Richard Thomas and Seda Thompson. Television with a dramatic difference.
Tonight at 9, here on Channel 2.
Friday night's broadcast schedule is brought to you in part by the law firm of Moss & Barnett, a professional association providing a full range of legal services. Ernst & Young, offering client-centered accounting, tax, and management consulting services to businesses large and small. Norwest Banks, providing investment, insurance, and banking services. And by the members of Channel 2.
Today, nearly 3/4 of our population live within 50 miles of the shore, but we've turned our backs to the repeated warnings of impending environmental disaster. Ted Danson looks at danger at the beach, another alert on the environmental crisis from the National Audubon Society.
Sunday night at 7, here on Channel 2.
You're watching member-supported
Channel 2.
Almanac is a production of KTCA TV for the stations of Minnesota Public Television.
News of a Minnesota doctor who died last year of AIDS. We'll hear the latest on that from the State Health Department. Also tonight, should the physically disabled have to pay more for bus rides? And a look at a source of Minnesota pride, Itasca, the source of the Mississippi. All that and a musical treat as well. So la-ti-da-do your way to the couch and join us tonight for Almanac.
Funding for Almanac is provided in part by the law firm of Larkin, Hoffman, Daly, and Lindgren, specializing in government relations, general business, and environmental law. The St. Paul Companies, a worldwide insurance organization. Pentex Ophthalmic, local manufacturers of eyeglass lenses and anti-reflective lens coatings. Group Health, Inc., providing medical and dental care in over 50 Twin Cities locations. Gabbard's Furniture and Design Studio of Edina. There's no place like home, and there's no place like Gabbard's. And by NSP, the energy to make things better. Major funding for KTCA's Community Affairs reporting on Almanac is provided by the McKnight Foundation, responding to the needs of individuals and communities, and the Pillsbury Foundation, focusing on programs serving children and youth at risk. Additional funding is provided by the James R. Thorpe Foundation.
They really cast their votes for me. Say, that's my vote you're holding. Gee, it's great riding with me. DeLong. You meet me at the Capitol. I turn and say you vote with me. You get the picture? That's why they made me the Speaker of the House. Outstate was always putting me down, 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 down. They said I came from the wrong side of town. They said you're from Kenwood, that's rich and strange. I said I look preppy, I act Iron Range. That's why they made me the of the house. The minute Bob Vanasek said he was through, me and my posse, we made our move. I act tough for the DFL. I'll keep 'em in line. I'm the speaker from hell. Look out, look out, look out, look out. I feel so powerful. Hey, wouldn't you? Considering all the debts that I'm due. At the Capitol, they stop and stare. At my height, it's no wonder. I don't care. They'll never forget me, the Speaker of the House. Speaker of the House, that's me, D-Long. 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 Speaker of the House.
Jan is taking the night off, and so sitting in for her again tonight, Karen Himley.
Thanks, Eric. Let's take a look at this week's top stories. On Monday, the state announced it had reached an agreement with a logging company that would spare a 29-acre tract of old white pines near Ely. The pines have been at the center of a controversy for several years. Tuesday's news included the announcement from Arnie Carlson that David Bolio is the acting head of the State Human Rights Department. We'll have more on that later. And the old Schmidt Brewery in St. Paul may reopen yet as a Grain Belt brewery. That was the announcement Wednesday by Minneapolis investor Bruce Hendry. If all goes well, beer might be brewed there by this fall. And late this afternoon, Stearns County Sheriff's Office did announce that the body of St. Cloud State student Melissa Johnson was discovered today near St. Cloud. Tonight, a murder suspect is in custody.
Our first story tonight is this one, another high-profile media report of a state physician with AIDS. Last night, KARE-TV reported that Dr. Thomas Comfort, a surgeon at St. Paul Ramsey Medical Center, died last year of AIDS.
His name was Dr. Thomas Herman Comfort. He was a Twin Cities surgeon, and last fall he died of AIDS. But KARE 11 News has learned the Minnesota Health Department decided that was information his patients did not need to know.
The station reported that none of Comfort's patients was contacted by state health officials. Last night, state health officials could not comment on the case until confidentiality waivers were signed. Tonight, most of the waivers have been signed, and the state health department now is ready to clear up what it says are serious inaccuracies in the reporting so far. Mike Moen's with us from the state health department. Mike, what kind of calls have you and the medical center received during the day? Have you taken any kind of account? Or?
Well, I think the medical center has received a number of phone calls. We've received some of the phone calls off the story as well. Some of the concerns we had is about some of the inaccuracies that were portrayed in this story. One factual error that was put out was that there was a conversation between Dr. Osterholm and Dr. Comfort in 1988.
Osterholm's a state epidemiologist.
That's correct. And that there was based somehow on that conversation that he retired from practice. And I think it creates this perception that there's some deal that was struck. And I don't think that adds to the real discussion involved. Actually, there was no conversation with the physician, Dr. Osterholm, in 1988. There was an investigation undertaken when the case was reported to us. At that time, mainly to look at whether or not there was transmission possible from the patient to physician. And it was determined at that point that there was not an increased possibility, and so the converse was also very likely.
What about the confidential matters that Dr. Osterholm talked about last night? We heard a little bit earlier about the conversation. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, as you know, the only way we can really talk about these cases in terms of the public setting is if we do get waivers from the individuals who are affected, and I think that at the heart of that are the data privacy laws, which we have that protect the patient's confidentiality of patients that are reported to us, including patients who are physicians. There is a provision, though, in the confidentiality laws that does allow the commissioner to release that information when there's an imminent public health threat. And in fact, with Dr. Benson's case, it was the use of that particular provision that we were prepared to use if necessary. Dr. Benson did agree to allow the release, so we didn't need to use it. But in that case, we did feel there was a reason to release, and so did so.
You mentioned Dr. Benson. I guess I'm interested in finding out what the difference is between the situation with Dr. Benson and Dr. Comfort, because you did not order the look back, I guess is what it's called, where you notified the patients of Dr. Comfort and had them go through testing.
Right. I think one of the misperceptions is that the concept of look back is some well-established, well-defined procedure. In fact, it's not. It's very much evolving. In fact, there's only been 10 done in the country, and only 3 of those have actually been done by state health departments. The other 7 have been done by various institutions. And there is not a national body right now that does recommend look backs as a matter of routine for surgeons or other healthcare workers. What made the Dr. Benson case the exception is there were extenuating circumstances that Dr. Benson had these lesions, these open lesions that most experts did agree that was different from all other HIV-infected healthcare workers and therefore warranted a look back in that situation.
Well, this is doctor number 3, and what are there, 6 physicians supposedly with the HIV virus in Minnesota, and I can see this from a management point of view. These are going to come dribbling out one after another. The public's there'll be a bump in the hysteria and it'll go back down again. Is there a way to better manage, get these all out at once on the table and deal with it in one lump instead of having it kind of spaced out over months?
Well, I think, Eric, that's partly our question back to the media is a little bit is, are we going to be kind of searching out one of these at a time and trying to put them out? And
I'm sure you will be.
The concern we have is that what's been somewhat absent is the broader policy discussions that surround what are we going to do with HIV-infected healthcare workers and HIV-infected patients in terms of providing medical care and treatment. Certainly for the HIV-infected physician who's a psychiatrist, has no patient care activities, there really is no purpose in that information being shared with patients. There's no risk involved. He doesn't perform any invasive procedures. So I think to just take the whole broad category of healthcare workers and say somehow they're by definition, because they're healthcare workers, posing a risk, it doesn't necessarily reflect reality what's occurring. So I think we need to look at within that category, what are those procedures that do.
So you categorically say Dr. Comfort's patients not at risk?
Well, I think the concept of not at risk or zero risk is one that we as public health can't put out. And I think the other issue that's missing is we haven't defined yet as a society what level of risk are we willing to deal with. Yeah. And once that's defined, we as public health practitioners can go ahead and implement programs to prevent that level of risk, and that's where we have not done that yet.
But Mike, what about the concerns? There are patients out there, we know of the 6 physicians, that 2 of them had died. Everybody knows that. There are people out there who know their physician has died, and now they're wondering, we don't know whether or not he was one of those that died of AIDS. Isn't there a public right to know who the remaining physicians or healthcare practitioners are?
Well, I think, Karen, there's a public right to protection. I think patients do have a right, absolutely, to be protected from healthcare providers that are going to put them at some increased risk of disease or infection or whatever. I think how we achieve that right, how we implement that is what we need to talk about, the how. Certainly informing patients is one way to do it. Let them know that their healthcare provider is HIV infected. Let them make the decision. I think the question you need to ask yourself, though, if we've decided there's a physician who by doing certain procedures and he's HIV infected puts his patients at risk, merely informing the patient of that fact, is that adequate? Shouldn't we really be asking the question, should we allow that physician to do those procedures at all?
Question for another night. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell the players without a program over at the State Human Rights Department. Here are some program notes. The Human Rights Commissioner position was a late appointment. Frank Gallegos, at first not a candidate, was then named to the post. The controversial Gallegos then took a leave of absence to return to his job in the private sector. This week his replacement was announced. He is David Bolio, and he is officially a deputy commissioner with the title of acting commissioner. And if you remember all of that, you are either a genius or you work in the department yourself. Acting State Human Rights Commissioner David Bolio joins us. Boy, that is a tangled web, and you have your first day on the job Monday, but what is that job?
Well, the job is, is to serve as commissioner in an acting position.
Is an announcement that that's going to become permanent something we're going to hear about next week, or?
No, Frank is on leave of absence for a year's period of time, as far as I know. If he should return, I would become deputy at that time.
I wonder if the Human Rights Department is suffering a problem that many state departments have in transitions from one administration to the next, in this case the Perpich to the Carlson administration. Are there loyalists to Commissioner Cooper, DFL loyalists, Cooper loyalists, in there spreading stuff that is to make the Carlson administration look bad or make Commissioner Gallegos look bad? You worked in the Perpich administration. You might be able to give us some insight into that.
Well, I haven't had time yet, really, to assess the department's situation and so forth. I hear that there are some morale problems. I believe that one of the things I need to do immediately is to begin to take some leadership to the department. One of the focuses I have is to manage the department very well. And I think to begin to focus on the mission and purposes of that department and begin to organize and move that department forward on those objectives.
Now, since you're acting commissioner and presumably Commissioner Gallegos will come back, are you calling him every day to find out what his philosophy is so that you have done what he would like to do were he here? Or?
Absolutely not. There is no intention to do that. I'm acting as if I am commissioner, actually, and moving straight ahead with the job at hand, which is to manage the department and to move the whole agenda forward.
If you reviewed the news reports, you'd get the impression this is a little bit of turmoil over there and not much actual casework is getting done, and there was this big backlog in the department a few years ago. Is casework getting done? Is the backlog under control?
As far as I understand, it is. We need to make sure that we continue to do that, to handle the basic work of the department and do that very well. We need to make sure that complaints are handled and that they're handled forthrightly and accurately. But we also need, once we are able and assured that we're doing that well, is to begin to also move forward on a number of other things. I think we need to broaden the statewide presence of the Human Rights Department and of human rights. One of the things we can do is to begin to look at the ways in which state agencies generally respond to or can be a part of the human rights focus and so forth. There are a number of things in the Department of Education, for example. Many people complained to my office and to me personally on issues which are really human rights related issues.
And you directed Indian education programs.
That's correct. And I know there's a number of things that we can do to begin to expand the presence of human rights across the state agencies. We also have to make sure that state agencies are not the center of complaints and of issues of human rights. And then I also think that we need to begin to become proactive. One of the things that the commissioner can do, of course, is to create task forces, to create investigations, to look into issues in a more forward-looking approach. We need to get out ahead of complaints and to begin to look at the issues facing the state, which are human rights and character.
Coming to the position from an education background as you do, what particular skills can you bring to a human rights department in terms of putting this philosophy in place?
Well, the background has been education, but it's also been Indian affairs, and in that case, in developing programs in Indian education and so forth, I've been involved very much in human rights related issues as it affects Indian people in this state. It is also, I think, one of the primary purposes of our department should be to educate people about the issues at hand. That is, of course, an ongoing, constant job. If you scratch the surface in most communities these days, in fact, it's often right on the surface, issues of racism and ethnocentrism. This past summer and past summers before, northern Minnesota, kill an Indian to save a walleye type of thing. Issues in the East Side community of racism in housing and so forth. We need to be very active and proactive in these issues.
Commissioner Bolio, good luck.
Yeah, good luck with it.
Thank you.
Metro mobility, bus service for disabled people, a lot of their funding has been cut. How big a priority do you think that should be for the state?
I think it should be a big priority. I think that handicapped people have the same rights as everybody else to be able to get around as needed. And I think that city and government should offer that service to them.
I don't think the problem so much as the cut in funding is how they've allocated the money that they're going to spend, and we're real hip to it. I drive for a Minneapolis Yellow Cab. We drive a lot of Metro Mobility trips, and yeah, they have disadvantaged a lot of the customers, especially the ones in suburbia that have to ride 5 days a week. It's now going to cost them $35 a week, which is ridiculous.
It's a pretty expensive service to provide. Should they have to pay the same amount to ride the bus as people ride the conventional bus service?
No, not really. No, there should be a difference.
It's a controversy that was here, then went away, and has come back again. Metro Mobility. Here's a quick primer for greater Minnesotans. Metro Mobility is a Twin Cities area program that provides transportation for physically disabled Metro residents. The program is supported by the state, and this year its funding was cut. A demonstration, a little protest at the governor's residence last month led Arnie Carlson to say he would look to restore the funds, but several weeks later he is still looking for the money. And meanwhile, Metro Mobility has doubled its fares from $1 to $2 a ride and has cut some routes. This fare increase has been protested by a group called the Fair Fares Coalition. Elin Olson's with that group. Here, too, is Michael Ehrlichman, who chairs the Regional Transit Board, and that is the group that oversees all Twin Cities public transportation. Thank you both for being here. Mike, you had a little meeting on this today. What can you bring us up to date on where we're at?
Actually,
have we found the money?
Actually, we had a meeting on it yesterday.
Was it yesterday? Okay.
Right, yesterday.
You find the money?
Sorry to say, no. The money hasn't been to relieve the pressure, at least for now, hasn't been discovered.
Is the bill crafted in such a way you can't jimmy the funds around in the transit bill? Or?
Well, the program, it would take $29 million to run the program without any cuts, fare increases, and we got $25 million, plus the caveat, the proviso that we could not access other revenue sources within the RTB, as we have in the past. We were given a shortfall 2 years ago in the biennium, and but we used property tax dollars then to supplement the program. This biennium, we were prohibited from doing that, so we really have to eliminate $4 million somehow out of the program. The governor was moved by the people that attended the rally, the demonstration in front of his home, and he's made a sincere attempt to locate dollars. And I think that attempt is still going on within the department. As of yesterday, there were still some hopes that through different divisions there might be a way at least to provide some assistance to those who have the greatest amount of pain. And I know that's where it was allowed.
But now this wasn't a line item veto. This was in the budget bill. I guess, Elin, maybe you can comment, if the governor was moved by the appeal, what happened during the legislative process? Because obviously you knew this was coming.
It just simply, the fact is the message was fairly clear. The legislature intended that the program be cut back. I don't think that that's a secret.
Yeah, one thing, I want to clarify something here. When you began, Eric, you were talking about how this was a program that affects the Twin Cities and that this is like not an issue that affects greater Minnesota. I want to tell you that you are absolutely wrong about that. The reason why is those of us with severe physical disabilities and other disabilities such as mental illness, mental retardation, any developmental delay, many of us are transplanted to the Twin Cities area. I'm one of those. I grew up in a small town in northern Minnesota, and there was nothing there for me. There is no accessible transportation. There's no employment. In fact, there's only one bathroom in the town that I grew up in that I can use, and that's the one in my home. So we are down here. We are from northern Minnesota, we're from southern Minnesota, etc.
Well, the doubling of the fare, I suppose somebody might say, well, it's a smaller population, there's high-tech equipment involved, maybe a little more money in a tight budget time when there isn't subsidy available?
Well, you can't get into discrimination. You can't say that one group of people can't ride, can't have access to transportation because of their physical or mental condition. You just can't do that. That gets into basic discrimination. And right now, several claims have been filed with the Minnesota Human Rights Department. And I'm really pleased to see that there is a new acting commissioner so that this can be carried out.
What about, I guess I'd like to hear from both of you on this. On the 7th of July, the Star Tribune had an editorial headline, Metro Mobility, how much is too much? Elin, you're shaking your head no. What'd you think about that?
I was outraged. I really thought that that was just a real travesty. That was just outrageous. I don't think the Star Tribune really went out and talked to folks with disabilities that do use that service. They don't have an understanding. People with disabilities are really one of the last great oppressed peoples in our culture. Just think about that. Another transportation system such as Northwest Airlines, $740 million for them. That's for another group of people, a higher class of people, or maybe a more wealthy class of people that can access transportation on the airlines.
Mike,
what about us? We are the folks with the lowest average income.
I agree completely with Elin. I think that, in fact, the first time I was on this program was regarding Metro Mobility, a long time before I became chair of RTB. I think one of the problems when policymakers look at this program is they see special transportation. You know, that word, special, like it's not something we have to do, that it's outside of the course of normal government services. And as a result, historically, it's been funded in that context. When funds got tight, you cut back. When funds were a little bit more available, you provided more. And so it has ridden that up and down course since its inception.
Well, is the board guilty of not, since it's clear this is a bedrock basic human need for folks to have transportation, no doubt. Yeah. Did you not prioritize properly to fund this thing in your budget request?
We've made, the bottom line is that we are allowed only to spend the amount that the legislature allocated. We can't use any resources that we may have spend for other programs.
Was this at the top of your list when you went in? Or?
Certainly, at least was on top of mine, has been on the top of mine for a long time.
Were you satisfied with the lobbying effort?
Well, no. We had heard the gossip within the disability community, and there's some rather harsh gossip, Michael. The gossip is that RTB sort of fell in line with the rest of the DFL legislature in that we got a new governor that was asking for cuts, and I think the legislature said, cuts? You want cuts? We'll give you cuts. And I'm a little bit concerned that that's what happened to us and that we were being used as a pawn in this political game.
We're running short of time. Let him respond.
Well, I'm sorry that Elin feels that way. This program
that's not my feeling. That's the gossip, Michael.
And I'm sure that that's going to occur during any time in which cuts are being... well, the bottom line, this program is very important to me. I've struggled for it for a long time.
Do you use it?
And we spent a lot of time trying to persuade legislators that we needed to fully fund it.
Can the LAC or somebody come in with some money on loans, some kind of bonding? I don't know, but between now and the session to come up with the $4 million between now and '92? Is there any hope for that?
My understanding is they can't access LAC, but I'm not an expert in that. I don't know.
No. We've really asked the state agencies to really work cooperatively, and a couple of the state agencies really have done that. They've come forward to, talk with us, to put ideas out on the table, and I really want to thank Commissioner Natalie Steffen and Commissioner Jane Brown of the Department of Jobs and Training, and also Mary Shardall, who's the acting commissioner of the Division of Rehabilitation Services. Those folks have been very approachable. They've come forward with ideas. They want to work something out. They want to find a new way. We have to keep in mind that those agencies have a lot to lose. They fund a lot of programs for people with disabilities that are currently falling apart because of the fare increases and the reduced services.
Time has escaped us. Elin, thanks very much. Mr. Chairman, appreciate you coming down.
You bet.
Thanks a lot.
What do you know about the source of the Mississippi River?
That it starts in Minnesota, I think, but very little.
And I know it don't start in Minneapolis, so, or St. Paul, so long ways from here.
Mille Lacs Lake?
The source? Well, I know where it's at. It's up in Bemidji, Minnesota. I can't tell you if it comes from a spring or what, but it's Bemidji, Minnesota.
It's up by Itasca Park. I've walked over it.
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
Is that a big thrill for you? Or?
Oh, sure it was back then. Back in the 30s or 40s, I guess.
If you're a real Minnesotan, you've stepped across the stones at the headwaters of the Mississippi River at Itasca. It was 100 years ago this summer that Itasca was made the first state park in Minnesota. Itasca is the symbolic source of America's most famous river, and it's a success story in preserving our state's natural heritage. But Itasca is also a reminder of the struggles for understanding between Native Americans and the Europeans who settled here on the banks of the Mississippi. KTCA's Jim Bickle tells us the story of the search for the source of the Mississippi.
A river like the Mississippi clearly has hundreds of lakes and streams and springs that are sources of its waters. But in the 19th century, the concept of finding the ultimate source or beginning of a river was very popular. And in the case of the Mississippi, the source had political significance. Despite never being fully charted, the river's source was used to determine the border between the United States and Canada.
Benjamin Franklin and the people of his day, when they signed the treaty, thought it started by Winnipeg. In fact, they described the boundary from the source of the river to the northwest angle Lake of the Woods as the line straight west. Well, that was impossible, it was straight south virtually.
In the early 1800s, a series of explorers found their way to Minnesota, trying to gain the distinction as the man who discovered the source of the great Mississippi. But it was no simple task. Following the river gets tricky when you start running into all the lakes and rivers in northern Minnesota. And so the one thing all of these explorers had in common was that they would have been completely lost without their Native American guides.
So we actually viewed the early explorers, early non-Indian people, the light-skinned people we call them. Sometimes we're viewed as a deity, like maybe you're sent from God, maybe you're sent from spirits. And we're looked on with great curiosity and great respect, because in our way, what we don't know, we respect very much. And with that mixed curiosity was, what are you after? What do you wish to know? We're here as stewards of the land. We're here as stewards, your stewards too. If you wish to know something, ask us.
In August of 1805, shortly after the Louisiana Purchase, Lieutenant Zebulon Montgomery Pike was sent upriver from St. Louis to find the source. Pike would later discover Pike's Peak, but on this trip, all he discovered is you probably don't want to be exploring northern Minnesota in the middle of winter. Finally, in February 1806, Pike arrived at Leech Lake and wrote in his journal, "I will not attempt to describe my feeling on this accomplishment of my voyage, for this is the main source of the Mississippi." Other explorers found their way to other lakes and made the claim that they had found the true source of the Mississippi. One of the more colorful of these explorers was the Italian Count Giacomo Beltrami. Beltrami, who always insisted on carrying a red umbrella, barely survived his journey.
He was an unsuccessful explorer that actually got his whole white crew, as well as the Indian crew, so angry at him, they left him. They abandoned him. And because he was such a fool, and he was a buffoon, and people left him. They said, "You're not doing this right. You're not going in the right direction." But he said, "I know where this is. I'm going there." And of course, the Indians knew that wasn't true. And so they said, "Well, you can go there if you wish, but tomorrow you'll go alone."
Of course, the idea of discovery is misleading. The Ojibwe Indians who inhabited the region were quite familiar with the area's lakes and rivers. But the explorers probably had a difficult time explaining exactly what they were looking for.
To Indians, it's amusing that so aggressive it seemed no matter what happens, I want to be the one to discover the source. That was a bit perplexing to us because it was not important where it started because the whole river was of central importance. And yet it seemed the non-Indians that came here wanted, for some odd reason, to find where it began, to claim some kind of fame or some kind of glory. And to us, the whole of the river was beautiful and powerful.
The explorer who finally made it to what is now considered to be the source was an Indian agent named Henry Rowe Schoolcraft. In 1832, he set out from Michigan in search of the source. Along the way, he met the Ojibwe guide Ozawindib, who showed Schoolcraft that the beginning of the river actually flows north. On July 13th of 1832, Ozawindib brought Schoolcraft to this lake, which Schoolcraft named Itasca. For many years, there was confusion over where the word Itasca came from. People assumed it was an Indian word, when in fact it was made up during the Schoolcraft expedition.
It was coined from the two Latin words, veritas, meaning truth, and caput, meaning head. And he simply took the last part of veritas, the first part of caput, and came up with the word Itasca.
Even after Schoolcraft's expedition, explorers continued to make claims that the river could be traced beyond Itasca. In 1889, after a con man named Willard Glazier claimed to have found the true source, the Minnesota Historical Society stepped in and tried to clear up the confusion. They sent Jacob Brower to survey the headwaters area. He concluded that Itasca is the watershed lake of the region and should be considered the source. But settling the headwaters issue wasn't Brower's most important legacy. He had the foresight to recognize that this was an opportunity to preserve some natural woodlands, and he fought hard against the powerful timber interests to get Itasca designated as the first state park in Minnesota.
We look back today and we can't understand why Brower had so much opposition, but he was really unique, advocating something when everybody knew that we had too much wilderness already, and here he was wanting to preserve it. It didn't fly, you might say.
In reality, the now popular headwaters area wasn't really discovered, it was created. When the park was founded in 1891, the area was a marsh. During the Depression, the Civilian Conservation Corps stabilized the headwaters area with a dam, channeled the infant river along a winding course, and put in a row of rocks so that visitors could feel the thrill of walking across the mighty Mississippi.
Just to know where it starts, I think, is a neat idea. You can't even fathom what it's like until you see it.
Its smallness here in relationship to, we've been to New Orleans and saw where it comes out, and it's hard to imagine how it grows so much.
It's going to be a presidential primary in Minnesota early next year. To vote in it, though, you're going to have to declare what party you're in, and that'll be public information. Does that bother you?
No. No, I can say it does.
I don't think it's anybody's business what way I vote.
I think that it should be private, that it's a person's right to vote, who they vote for should be their own business.
I'm a Democrat. I'm proud of it.
I wouldn't want people knowing, for various reasons, what party I have allegiance to, and I think that's very intrusive.
What has four heads?
A Republican quarter.
Please. Let me get a laugh in here. What has 4 heads, 8 arms, 40 toes, and 943 clients? It's the Almanac Political Panel. Actually, we're only kidding about the number of toes. We've gathered up all these body parts tonight for a summertime look at the Minnesota body politic. DJ Leary, media consultant, DFLer, co-author of the newsletter Politics in Minnesota. Sarah Janicek's here, IR lobbyist. Doug Kelly, sometimes IR candidate for higher office, and he's an attorney the rest of the time. And a big Almanac welcome to Ruth Stanek, former chair of the DFL party and current DFL activist. And Ruth, another Massachusettan of Greek descent, running for president in your party, comes to town this week. And kicks off the official presidential season in Minnesota. What about Paul Tsongas?
Well, I didn't hear about a lot of DFL activists visiting with them yesterday, but I think what we're starting to see now is a lot of candidates coming into the picture. We've got Jay Rockefeller in town on Sunday, and I think that we'll see Tom Harkin and others in a matter of weeks or months.
So is that the field, or you got more candidates coming? Clinton?
Clinton, Gore, Jackson. I imagine that there'll be a number of people.
Doug Kelly, obviously you have an opinion on these candidates with your yawn.
Well, I mean, the whole thing, the most exciting thing that's going to happen is when everybody wakes up and finds out that they have to declare their party affiliation when they vote in the presidential primary. That'll be the only exciting thing, I think, that's going to happen. It'll be a good contest, I think, on the Democratic side, but who knows for what consequence.
How are Minnesotans going to respond to that? That's not a very Minnesotan thing to do, DJ.
You mean on the identification?
Yeah.
That was probably the only thing about the mail ballot I thought might work, because they'd have the privacy of their home to do that. Interestingly, though, I don't remember it being discussed from that point of view. Other than that, I wasn't too particularly supportive of the mail ballot. Minnesotans, the people in Wisconsin, same way, feel very strongly about this kind of independence, that we can decide if we're of any party or what party the day we get there. And we'll have to see if they vote by their non-attendance in the thing. And I'm not sure the '92 presidential race will be a good test, because there's not going to be tremendous interest in it. You know, the Democrats are going to end up with some guy who answers a newspaper ad, I think, the week of the convention.
Yeah, we see a lot of party activists, and I think both sides, that really want, you know, they feel that each party should be allowed to choose their own candidates. The problem is, especially in rural Minnesota, you don't want the hardware store owner doesn't want to go down and declare that he or she is a Republican or a Democrat. While they may feel very strong about one political party, they don't necessarily want the rest of the town to know, and I think that will be a problem, and I don't think that Minnesotans quite realize that yet.
Can the '92 legislature change that, or might they revisit that maybe?
Might be awfully late to try it, though.
Yeah, but it's just it's an advisory vote, and therefore the party, it really has nothing to do with the party. I mean, it's not saying this is the nominee, or all of the delegates have to be pledged to that. So it really is a beauty contest, and it's an expression of the total electorate.
But it's not
and
really
so there
just
shouldn't
a
be
beauty
anything.
contest.
Well,
it's supposed to have a percentage of the vote, and the very interesting thing will happen, and we'll be back in the courts over this again, I suppose, is if somebody gets 30% of the vote in the primary and they only get 10% through the caucuses, what do they do? Because they're supposed to get a proportional amount of the vote.
Isn't that what happened last time we had a primary in Minnesota?
Now, the Democrats say that I expect they'll probably be the ones that say that they're not going to abide by that. And the basic line is whether or not political parties are sort of private associations and can be governed by state law, or whether they're going to be left entirely alone. And that's up in the air, I have to say. So litigation-wise, you think about it in the future, nobody knows what's going to happen in that primary.
Well, last night, you had the DFL caucus, 79 strong, meeting at the Capitol, and Bob Vanasek gives a soliloquy, what do you call it, a farewell address? Valedictory address is what I'm trying to say. And Dee Long and Alan Welly end up as the new DFL leadership team. Sarah, you work up there. How are they going to be?
Well, I tell you, as a Republican, I sort of breathed a sigh of relief when Paul Ogren wasn't elected majority leader. Even though he's wrong in the rhetoric, he's a very good orator. And that's not to denigrate the others, but we're kind of happy about that.
So what philosophic message do we get out of this?
Oh, I think it's a real nice balance. I mean, you've got Dee Long, who is so tenacious. I mean, Dee is tough. I think she's bright. She knows the issues. She's been down in the trenches. She's, I think, as good as any other speaker that we've had. And then you've got Alan Welly, who's a really nice complement to Dee. I mean, I think he's going to do really well in the L-shaped part of the state, the 1st, the 7th, and 2nd congressional districts, where it's been tough for Democrats, but we've done well. I think Alan's going to sell very well out there, and I think it's a great balance.
Let's go back to the beating up on the governor issue. Dee Long is in sort of a bind because she represents very wealthy homes. And Alan Welly, boy, you look at his voting record, he could be a Republican. So it'll be interesting to see how they challenge the governor on certain issues.
Well, what about that toe-to-toe business with Carlson in '92?
I'm not sure that that's going to be the big issue. Of the situation you had in the House was you had an individual in Bob Vanasek, along with Roger Moe in the Senate, who may be candidates and thinking about being candidates for governor. We've called him Governor Moe, Governor Vanasek. Dee Long does not appear to have those same kind of ambitions, nor does Alan Welly, and therefore can go to what really they were elected for, and that is to hold on to that majority. So fighting with the governor and getting a soundbite on the 6 and 10 is not going to be #1 in their book. getting some good legislation passed and trying to
come on,
outfox
TJ,
them.
in an
will be
election
particular.
year, it's important.
No, I think you got to get the candidates for the House to win at the local. You got 201 elections that'll be more important than that one, because he isn't up again until 1994.
How about Irv Anderson in manufacturing 35 votes, coming real close, and he's been gone for a long time, and boy, they're pretty impressive.
Quite a show. Would have been quite a show, I think, if he had ended up in that spot because of the fireworks that may have occurred between the governor's office and that. But you know, with Dee, I think that she will, in many respects, I mean, it is a groundbreaking thing to have a woman do that. But in her rural image outstate, I mean, she is a big city liberal. And that's going to have a hard time going over in rural Minnesota, I think. So we'll have to see what the dynamics of that plays out.
Any chance that they're going to try and take care of some of that by realigning committee chairmanships? You've got Alan Welly, he's the chair of a major committee at Health and Human Services. He's got a lot of other responsibility now. Are they going to start changing the players around going into 92?
We had the same sort of thing happen when, back a couple years ago, when Fred Norton, went to the Court of Appeals, had been Speaker, and Bob Vanasek was elected Speaker in what we call a midterm, as it were. And I think there was only one committee chairmanship that Bob was able to appoint on his own. It was this last time that were all his. And I think the same thing will happen. Everything will keep the alignment they got. There may be a little tinkering, but not anything major across, because it works. They know what, and they really got to focus on those 92 re-elections.
Hey, the governor had a letter to a constituent, was it this week, that there was a vetoed bill that wasn't vetoed, or he didn't quite know where the bill was. Sarah, what's going on in the old staff up there in the governor's office?
I don't think anybody knows but those people on staff. It's too bad they made that mistake. That's a pretty bad one. I think there needs to be a change someplace. I'm not sure who needs to go, but there needs to be a change for public image more than
Kelly,
anything
you've been
else.
a chief of staff to a major office holder. What do you, if you were going to give some helpful, constructive advice, what would you say?
Well, I was thinking about it as a former chief of staff, and you think about who generated the letter and how did it wind its way up through the process, and I'm sure that they're looking through that to see that that kind of a thing doesn't happen again, and that you coordinate those with your legal theories and stuff. But I don't know. I think that the slow start, or the terrible start that they got in terms of the election and all that, is just now getting a time to shake out. So I think they'll get a little bit more time, and they'll get things on keel.
I'm sorry, Doug. One more thing, and that's that I hope that they don't. Last time the big snafu, it was blamed on a lower level staffer. I think that's inappropriate, and that someone in charge needs to take the fall.
Well, we said in the newsletter this week that this governor has not been well served by just that little untidy things, tidying up. The ethanol bill we used as an example, where the letter drafted by a staffer said that he line vetoed the money for the Minnesota Ethanol Commission for promoting ethanol, and says a bill like this that mandates the use of ethanol shouldn't need a promotion. Well, the fact of the matter is the bill didn't mandate ethanol. That had been changed somewhat. And again, it's just the things that makes the guy on top look bad, because the people down below, their names aren't known on it. So they got to get that thing shaken.
Yeah, what about some of the bigger things? I mean, we had Acting Commissioner Bolio on tonight. We've had Commissioner, sometimes here Gallegos and sometimes there Gallegos. And I guess I like your comments on why they don't just outright appoint a full-time commissioner. Why do they keep this up?
Well, they like acting commissioner. If my count is right, since the Carlson administration started, this is the third acting commissioner in the Department of Human Rights. One was either appointed twice, and there was somebody before Frank, and he's gone back to CDC to do some work. And it may be that you give that title of acting to send the message that you're holding the job open for the other guy, and that's all.
What's so puzzling about it is this is a man who ran on experience in government. And he said, I know how to govern, that's why the Republican Party should nominate me, that's why I should be elected governor of Minnesota, and it has been just chaotic ever since he took office. And this is someone who's been, has had a history of public service.
On the other hand, though, it's generally accepted in the public affairs community that Arnie has made better appointments than Rudy Purpose.
Is it a political issue with the typical voter? Is this a political issue?
I don't think so. I think, the thing that I think is most important right now, if you look at it, is what's going on in Connecticut, in Maine, in Rhode Island, and all those places where they're closing down the state, they're doing all that kind of stuff, and we avoided that here in Minnesota. And I think the governor deserves a big share of the benefit for having done that.
Governor Purpose deserves it for having some kind of reserve.
Well,
several years ago.
but they were able to come to some kind of an agreement, and that's, I don't say that the governor gets it all, but certainly a part of that. And so we're looking at these commissioners and things, and that you always have a sorting out, I think, at the beginning. But I think overall, people are glad now when they watch these states that are totally shut down that we avoided that. And we passed the budget this time. It had the smallest amount of spending and so forth. So, you know, increase in spending. So I think the governor's to be commended for those.
I think there's something to that, because you normally wouldn't think a first-term Republican would approve the huge $600 and some million in new taxes that they came in with this year, and I think otherwise we'd be stuck in this, and the special session would be running through this time now, and we wouldn't be putting the audience to sleep. We'd be talking about the big fights over there. But the fact of the matter is, endorsing and embracing and coming with the idea on that tax, the willingness to raise taxes was the one that made the break.
A couple of minutes on the U.S. Senate. Wellstone and Durenberger join hands and both vote against the anti-crime package. Surprise? Predictable?
Well, I think for Durenberger's position, it's pretty predictable because he has consistently voted against the death penalty, and that's a matter of conscience for him. And so, notwithstanding how the Star and Tribune chalked up his reasons for voting against it, that's why he did. So that was pretty predictable, I think. And he did vote for the compromise that came through on the gun control thing, too. And I expect for Wellstone, it's natural for him to vote against it.
Anybody? How is Wellstone doing, Ruth? He's.
I think part of Paul's going through a learning process. He hadn't held public office before. It's his first 6 months, and he's got a lot of time. He's got 5.5 years left.
You want to see a group that he really does well with. I was out the National Indian Gaming Conference this last week in Bloomington, and he asked, like Minnesota United States Senators used to ask to be on the Agriculture Committee, he asked to be on Daniel Inouye's subcommittee from the Interior on Indian Affairs. And the Indian people in this state have enormous regard for him because they now, for the first time, have a home state senator that's asked for a seat, and the kind of applause and the way they listened to him indicated that he has many friends in the Indian community that had for a long time been overlooked.
Any rumbles about Durenberger? Is he getting ready to go for re-election? Is he looking for...
I think he's officially looking at it. So are a lot of other people, though, too.
Well,
some of whom may be sitting on this couch. I don't know.
The green light is on for Durenberger, and I expect that that's
primary
that's
challenge.
natural.
If he would go again, a primary challenge within that Republican Party?
Doubt it. Doubt it.
I expect it. I expect it.
Give us a Democrat who'd run for Senate.
Oh, I think...
or give us one that won't. Maybe that's...
That's right. I think that there's just a whole litany of people that are looking at it.
You could publish a yellow page
that's right.
with all of their names.
You a candidate for something?
No, I'm not. No.
Okay.
They wanted her to be mayor of Bloomington. I heard that already.
Thank you, political panel. Nice to have you all here.
Thanks a lot.
Good. The big three cultural collectors of American life, the Smithsonian, the Library of Congress, and the Index File. And only one of them is a bargain for the taxpayers. You guessed which one? I know you did. Last week's if question, insiders like to call it the if question, had to do with a fabled mystery Minnesotan. There he is again. Born December 28, 1908, this person gained fame around the globe in the 20s and 30s. This person was still well known when, on the eve of World War II, he or she was quoted as saying this: "We will never stop wars until we individually stop fighting them," and that's what I propose to do. This person's pacifist cry drew an outcry from the American press, and our question was this: who is this mystery pacifist Minnesotan? Now, in the big-hearted Index File tradition, we added a couple of helpful hints. We told you that this person once was married to an American famous in his or her own right, and we warned you not to call with the first name that kind of came into your head. But did you ignore us? Is Wisconsin full of cheeseheads?
It's either Mr. or Mrs. Mulford Q. Sibley.
The answer to your question is Gus Hall, who went on to become the president or the head man of the Communist Party in the United States.
I believe that it's Dr. Billy Graham. Even though you said don't answer this question with the first thing that comes to mind, but gosh, I just got to do it. I think that the answer to the index file question is Charles Lindbergh.
Dayton's. Moorhead Day, we warned you. But if it's any consolation, you were one of 46 people who called, and they were convinced it was Charles Lindbergh. Only 5 callers got it right.
I think it's Lou Ayres, the actor, who is indeed still a pacifist, and he was once married to Ginger Rogers. And Lou went to Lake Harriet Grade School, grew up in Minneapolis, and of course went on to fame and fortune.
That's right. Lou Ayres, star of the movie classic All Quiet, there he is on the Western Front, was a Minneapolis native. Ayres caused a boycott of his still popular movies during World War II when he became the country's first famous conscientious objector. Ayres still is alive. He continues his work on peace and justice issues, and he can be seen from time to time on TV. All right. This week's question also kind of steps back in time, but not quite so far back. The date, May 28, 1971, and the place is the cover of, where does that guy come from? Life magazine. Someone who now lives in Minnesota was featured on the cover, full face, not really shown here. Here's a hint, this person was not born in Minnesota. Hint number 2, the Life magazine story about this non-Minnesotan included pictures of protesters. The question is, what Minnesotan was on the cover of Life magazine, May 28, 1971? Cast a line and give us a call, 612-229-1430. That is the number to dial. You'll get an answering machine, so you could even read from a prepared text, and you wouldn't even feel foolish. 612-229-1430. And why not give your thoughts about the program while you're on the line? Sort of a 2-for-1 situation. Last week, and if you saw it, you'll never forget it. I know I won't. Sir Sidney Hartman was on the show. It was a part of a tribute to longtime Duluth sportscaster Marsh Nelson. As we expected, Sidney got you callers going. Some of the calls were suitable for family listening, some were not, and here's a sampling.
Almanac has just sunk to a new low to have that Sid Hartman appear on the show.
Please bring back Sir Sidney. It was one of your better programs.
Sid just doesn't have a clue, and I doubt that he's ever had a clue about anything in his life.
Well, just think of it as kind of an electronic Ms. Lonely Hearts for public affairs nerds. 612-229-1430. Kids, please check first with your parents. 612-229, there it is, 1430. One program note for viewers in the Twin Cities. Next Tuesday night now, KTCA airs the POV series, a controversial documentary. It's called Tongues Untied. The program looks at being black and gay in America. 10:30 p.m. Channel 2. And then immediately following the documentary at 11:30 p.m., KTCA's Community Affairs Department will present a local follow-up discussion hosted by Neil Murray. The live follow-up will look at some of the issues and the film and the controversy surrounding the film. The program will feature a live call-in for viewers. That's called Tongues Untied, next Tuesday night, 10:30, and the live local follow-up at 11:30. That's it for tonight. Again, thanks to Karen Himley. We'll see you next week.
If you missed any part of this week's edition of Almanac, you can catch our regularly scheduled repeat Sunday morning at 9:30. And next, it's the latest scoop from the Capitol. Washington Week in Review is coming up next. Later tonight, Richard Thomas and Seda Thompson cope with losing a loved one to AIDS. Andre's Mother, tonight at 9 on American Playhouse, here on Channel 2.
Funding for Almanac is provided in part by the law firm of Larkin, Hoffman, Daly, and Lindgren, specializing in government relations, general business, and environmental law. The St. Paul Companies, a worldwide insurance organization. Pentex Ophthalmic, local manufacturers of eyeglass lenses and anti-reflective lens coatings. Group Health, Inc., providing medical and dental care in over 50 Twin Cities locations. Gabbard's Furniture and Design Studio of Edina. There's no place like home, and there's no place like Gabbard's. And by NSP, the energy to make things better. Major funding for KTCA's Community Affairs reporting on Almanac is provided by the McKnight Foundation, responding to the needs of individuals and communities, and the Pillsbury Foundation, focusing on programs serving children and youth at risk. Additional funding is provided by the James R. Thorpe Foundation. Almanac is a production of KTCA TV for the stations of Minnesota Public Television.
If it was news, you'll find out more about it on Washington Week in Review next.
It was the birth of a dream.
This is Rudy Valley announcing from the RKO studios in Hollywood.
The magic of pictures and sound. And America was thrilled. The beginning of Hollywood, the golden years.
Saturday night at 8, here on Channel 2.
Friday night's broadcast schedule is brought to you in part by the law firm of Moss & Barnett, a professional association providing a full range of legal services. Ernst & Young, offering client-centered accounting, tax, and management consulting services to businesses large and small. Norwest Banks, providing investment, insurance, and banking services. And by the members of Channel 2.
The long, hot summer of 1988. Yellowstone was one big tinderbox, just waiting for a single spark. And on June 23rd, it happened. But maybe the best way to fight a fire like this is not to fight it at all. See what came out of the ashes of Yellowstone on fire. Next time on Nature.
Sunday night at 8, here on Channel 2.
You are watching member-supported Channel 2.
Washington Week in Review is brought to you locally by Briol & Wilmus, a law firm representing individual investors in securities litigation and arbitration. Dane Bosworth, serving the investment needs of KTCA viewers throughout the Upper Midwest. Northwestern National Life, insurance, employee benefits, and financial services that emphasize customer service. Minnesota's credit unions, people helping people. And by Boise Cascade, making and distributing paper and office products in Minnesota for more than 25 years.
A new American policy toward South Africa. One of our stories tonight on Washington Week in Review.
Ford Motor Company, worldwide manufacturer of automotive products, has provided funding for this program. At Ford, quality is job one. Funding for this program was provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the financial support of viewers like you.
Now, here's moderator Paul Duke.
Good evening. It's well known that President Bush likes to conduct foreign policy and has his own distinctive ideas about it. But members of Congress have their ideas as well, and this week emphasize the differences, the president lifting economic sanctions against South Africa to the disapproval of the Democratic lawmakers. Likewise, both Democrats and Republicans joined to oppose Mr. Bush's liberal trade policy toward China. The president is retaining Alan Greenspan as chairman of the Federal Reserve Board amid growing signs of economic recovery. But another presidential nominee faces serious Senate scrutiny because of an explosive new chapter in the Iran-Contra scandal. Here now, with chapter and verse of all these developments, Alan Murray of the Wall Street Journal, Haynes Johnson of the Washington Post, Gloria Borger of U.S. News and World Report, and Margaret Warner of Newsweek. Well, the president has reopened the door to South Africa, Margaret.
Absolutely, Paul. 5 years after Congress imposed economic sanctions on South Africa, Bush this week lifted them, saying that
the steps the Pretoria government had taken to end apartheid were irreversible. Specifically, of course, he said that Pretoria had met the 5 conditions laid down in the legislation 5 years ago, the last one being the release of all political prisoners. Now, as a theoretical matter at least, it should open the door to all kinds of investment between the U.S. and South Africa, direct investment by our companies there, South African wine on our shelves, the sale of Krugerrands, and so on. As a practical matter, it may not, but I do think this is quite an interesting moment that 5 years ago we would not have foreseen, and I can't help but compare it to the Middle East, where the people there are just stuck in their same old attitudes. The fact is, I think the road to reform in South Africa is still very bumpy, but blacks and whites are moving down that road.
Does this mean, though, the end of isolation?